We get back on the other side. It's Black and Right with Bob Parks. My goodness, a black conservative. I'll bet you. I wonder if anyone's going to call in and call him a name. That always seems to happen. I'm sure he's tough enough to take it, and he's heard it all. That's on the other side of this break on The Schilling Show. Stay with us. And you are with The Schilling Show. Coming up in hour number 2, Dr. Elena George, a doctor's response to Obamacare. Right now, we welcome to The Schilling Show, and what I hope is the first of many conversations on these topics, because Bob Parks is not afraid to tell it like it is. Media producer for the Media Research Center, purveyor of the blog blackandright.com, and we're talking today about the Democrat race lie. And there's a lot of Democrats that listen to this program, and I hope that they're willing to engage today as we have this discussion with Bob Parks. Welcome to The Schilling Show, Bob.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
Hey, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be a conservative, because it's certainly going at least against the predominant culture in America.
Sure. Well, going back, I grew up as a Bostonian Democrat.
Yeah.
And what it took for me was, first off, when I was in the Navy, I was stationed on an aircraft carrier out of Japan, and one of the frequent trips we made to the Philippines, I got an opportunity to see what real poverty was. I grew up being taught that being black meant that I was going to be poor because of racism, and the poverty that I saw around me was nothing compared to what I saw when I was overseas. And it was that was the first taste of where I saw that of all the places I could have been born, America was definitely the best. And that went against a lot of things that I was taught as a young Democrat. And then later on, during the 90s, I just started having philosophical problems making excuses for Bill Clinton. Because despite what was said, what was done, what we saw, it all came down to, if you were a good Democrat, you just said everybody does it or whatever. And I got to a point where I couldn't keep doing that. So, and then one of my friends where I used to work in Hollywood, turned me on to this racist guy on the radio by the name of Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
And after listening to him, and he made a lot of sense. He was funny, but he challenged me intellectually and logically. And of course, we know that the Democrat ideology is based a lot on emotionalism. In 1995, I changed my party registration officially to being a Republican, and got the subsequent slings and arrows that come along with that.
Yeah, Bob, I was going to ask you about that because we've hosted a number of prominent black conservatives on this program over the years, and the story is always the same. It's like you've sold out, you're an Uncle Tom, you're an Oreo, and all the other derisive terms. What's up with that? Why is it that people can't just be comfortable with somebody having their own perspective, even if the other person doesn't agree with it?
Well, it's funny how the liberals seem to live by this whole thing where, since we all look alike, we're all supposed to think and vote alike. It's probably one of the most insulting things that I've heard. But let me break it down to something, make a couple of points. First off, I'm sure a lot of people in your listening audience have what's known as a car.
Mm-hmm.
And when the car breaks, what do? You take it to a shop, you pay good money, and you expect the car to be fixed. Well, black people have been voting for Democrats for decades. Democrats who keep promising every 2 to 4 years that they're going to improve schools, they're going to bring more jobs to the area, and hopefully, but by just those two things alone, it's going to lower the crime rates in black neighborhoods, and all the other myriad of promises that Democrats make to black folk. And yet, how many decades later, the same problems exist? If not, they are worse. And they call me a fool because I will not continue to keep voting for the same person who makes promises and doesn't keep them. Also, it was in 1964 that Malcolm X gave a speech in which he called black Democrats chumps, because basically his rationale was the white vote when it comes to presidential elections are basically split. And it's the black vote based on turnout that swings an election either way. The problem is, after these presidents get elected, the very black folk whose votes put them over the top is neglected. Why is it that you always hear people like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson every 4 years come out and say, don't take the black vote for granted? Mm-hmm. If they have to keep saying that every 2 to 4 years, what does that tell you? And I'm the idiot because I'm going to go and put my vote to a party that more has my values in consideration. The name calling, yeah, that I think is one of the big problems when it comes to a lot of people who have Republican or conservative ideals. But that is the big deterrent, and especially it's bad in academia, where young people feel like they're compelled to be Democrats and liberals because of the ridicule that they will take. And I've been doing this for quite a long time. And I remember what I went through initially. I mean, black folk, when I told them I was Republican, they looked at me like I shot their mama. And it's not an easy thing. I was at a Republican Trailblazer event for black conservatives yesterday, and Reince Priebus was up there talking, giving his spiel about outreach. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy just does not get it. Because I liken the conversion to Republican as going to Alcoholics Anonymous. Because Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't advertise and they don't say, come join us. No, you go to them when you are ready. And the thing is, the Republican Party should have a mechanism for minorities and young people and women and people who just decide that they want to go in a different direction, and have a mechanism that has open arms ready to embrace them. But instead, they go out with these phony outreach kind of things that never work and look like pandering because it is pandering.
That's exactly the word that was coming to mind. We're talking with Bob Parks. He's the purveyor of black, and there's a dash there, and then a dash right.com, blackandright.com. Some terrific content there. And we're talking about the Democrat race line. Jordan is with us at 977-1070. And Jordan, you're on with Bob Parks. Go right ahead.
Thank you so much. You're inspiring me. But I wanted to point out one fact that might add something to the discussion, and that was there was an article in Smithsonian in the 90s, and they talked about how blacks were loyal to the party of Lincoln, which was Republicans. And then there was an incident in the South, which was similar to Katrina, where they had to evacuate, and the local government was Republican at the time, and they said, you who are living on the other side of the tracks, per se, African Americans, you stay here and help with the cleanup and the rescue and the preparation, and we're going to evacuate later once we're safe and sound. And they never did. So they sort of used them. And so from that point on, they said that was an impetus for blacks turning from the party of Lincoln to the Democratic Party. And that seems odd to me because, I can see that, but then wasn't it that the typical Southern Democrat was racist, when they started that separate but equal kind of thing?
Let's get a response from Bob Parks. Yeah, Jordan, thank you for the call. Are you familiar with the incident that he discussed, and is that the impetus for a change?
I am not familiar with that particular incident, but there's the whole thing about the Southern strategy, and that's up for debate because obviously very few of us are alive who went through it and could actually see it as it was happening. But the whole mantra was at one point there were a bunch of racists in the Democratic Party because up into the 50s, black people were not allowed to be Democrats. But going back to the Southern strategy, apparently there were a bunch of racist Democrats who decided to become Republicans. And depending on who you listen to, only 3 of them turned out to be the racists. But the other ones, they wanted smaller government. They wanted less intrusion in people's lives, and they weren't racist. And the Democratic Party was the party of racism. The Democratic Party was formed if for some of the people, and I know people like to say, well, this is all in the past, but the original slogan of the Democratic Party was the white man's party.
Wow.
You could go through and ask a whole bunch of trick questions about democratic racism. and ask people what party did this. And of course, from what you hear in the media and by activists, that yes, they would all think that these were all said by Republicans. I mean, I have quotes that I could give you that I couldn't repeat on the air because they were so racist, and they came from Democrats.
You know, Bob, it's interesting that you said the Democrats were the party of racists or racism, and I believe that they still are today, although in a different way, because when you are forcing somebody through programs that are meant to manipulate people to cede your individual liberty to the government, that is certainly a racist position. 977-1070 is the phone number. We've got to go to the break. We're running a little late. Bob Parks is our guest, purveyor of black-and-right.com. That's blackandright.com. Some great material there. And when we get back on the other side, we're going to talk about the current state of things politically in America and race and the Democrat Party. We'll get into all of that in just a moment when the Schilling Show returns. Bob Parks is our guest. We're talking about the Democrat race lie. And it's interesting that you pointed out on your website in a terrific article on this that Democrats claim to be unwavering, this is a quote, in our support of equal opportunity for all Americans. And then you went down this long list of breaches where the Democrats were certainly wavering, if not downright hostile to equal opportunity. How is it that they can get away with telling this lie to this generation?
I don't know. When I compiled that list, it was a result of me being asked one day what my opinion was of the Jim Crow era. And I had to admit that I didn't really know a lot about the Jim Crow era because, first of all, I'm not that old, and secondly, I was only privy to what I was taught in school. And for some reason, they don't really teach a whole lot about black history in school. It's even very selective as of to this day, and I had no reason why. So I decided I was going to start doing a little bit of digging because I wanted to try to come off as being neutral about this. I went to the PBS website. They had done a documentary on the Jim Crow era. When you go to the site, it breaks it down into two columns. One column was the Republican Party, and the other column was the Democratic Party. In the Republican Party, it was formed as an abolitionist party to slavery. I did not know that. And then I went down a little further and I saw some more. And then I went to the Democratic side and I was horrified. The things that Republicans have been and are being accused of to this day were things that the Democrats did. I mean, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were all basically to give blacks rights as citizens in this country. And they were almost unanimously voted against by Democrats. In fact, it was all the way up until 1964 for the Civil Rights and the Voting Rights Act, which was passed because of the Republican Party, not because of the Democratic Party. The Democrats voted mostly against it. And so that quote was on the Democrat.org website. That Democrats have been unwavering in their support of civil rights since the beginning of this country, which was a flat-out lie. And they rely on academia that is pushing this, the entertainment industry, as well as politicians. I mean, let me give you a quick example. Nancy Pelosi was just awarded the Margaret Sanger Award.
Oh, good grief.
Now, for people who don't know who Margaret Sanger is, she was a eugenist who founded Planned Parenthood. Now, we all hear how rosy and nice Planned Parenthood is because it provides health care and services for women. But the majority of Planned Parenthood clinics that perform and refer people to abortions are done in the minority communities. And that's who she targeted. Margaret Sanger was a eugenist who wanted to rid the world of what she considered the quote-unquote unfit. That included people with disabilities. It also included people who were poor. Specifically, it was aimed at people of color. And for Nancy Pelosi to win this award with a big smile on her face, surrounded by all kinds of jubilant Democrats, shows you right there what they think of black people. It's almost a common thing in New York State. There are more abortions of black babies than black babies being born. And Democrats celebrate this.
We saw it here in Virginia where we had the three top statewide elected offices, which are now held by Democrats, where they wrap themselves in the banner, the bloody flag of Planned Parenthood, as if this was something wonderful. Again, I think it goes back, Bob, to ignorance on the entire topic. We're out of time now, but I do want to encourage people to go to black-and-right.com. That's blackandright.com with dashes between the words. And Bob, will you join us again on the Schilling Show? There's so much more to talk about.
Anytime. Thanks again, Rob.
Yeah, thanks for being with me. And by the way, I had a chance to listen to your son's music. He's a very talented musician. Please pass that along from us.
Thank you very much. I will pass that on.
Okay, there he goes. That's Bob Parks, and an important discussion, and we need to have more of them, and they need to be something that people listen to and take to heart. And I think it was fascinating that Bob said, Republican outreach sounds like pandering, and I agree 100%. When people are ready, you need to have something in place to accept them and to call them in. But to go out and say, hey, we're going to do this for you, and this for you, and that's the way we're going to get you in, what is the difference between that and what the Democrats are doing? Now, if what you are selling to people is, hey, we want to make you less dependent on government, this is what we're going to do for you, that is the right message. We're going to give you independence. We want you to be free from the bonds of this racist government. That would be a good thing. But I'm not quite sure that message has been developed properly.